Okay, picture this. You're not in some brightly lit museum, no velvet robes, but deep, deep underground in a French cave. And you stumble upon this, well, this hidden masterpiece. We're diving into the really extraordinary clay bison sculptures of Le Duc d'Audebert today.
They are truly remarkable, aren't they? I mean, imagine these large, unbaked clay figures made something like, what, 14,000 years ago?
Yeah, Upper Paleolithic, the Magdalenian period specifically.
Oh, right, the Magdalenian. And, at a time when cave art mostly meant paintings, maybe engravings, these three-dimensional sculptures, they just stand out. They're incredibly special.
Exactly. And the way they're preserved is just exceptional. It gives us this almost like direct connection to the artists themselves, to their minds, their hands.
It really does.
But there's also this puzzle, isn't there? Why go to all that trouble? Creating something so elaborate, so, fragile, in such a remote, hard-to-reach spot inside the cave. What was the point?
Well, that's the big question. The very fact they're tucked away in this really deep chamber, one that took a real effort to get to, it suggests they were more than just decoration, It really points towards a specific purpose, something symbolic maybe, or tied to perhaps rituals.
Okay, let's try and unpack this incredible story then, piece by piece. Our deep dive today is really all about understanding these sculptures, how they were found, what they look like, what they might have meant.
Sounds good. Where do we start? The discovery.
Yeah, let's start right at the beginning. How are they actually found?
Right. Well, the discovery, back in 1912, it's quite a story. It was actually three teenagers, the sons of Count Henri Beguemont Max, Jacques, and Louis, and their friend, Francois Camel.
Teenagers. Wow.
Yeah. They were exploring the cave system on October 10th, 1912, and pushed into a part no one had really explored before.
And I remember reading, it wasn't exactly an easy entrance to that part, was it? Something about a really narrow passage.
That's right. La Chatière, they call it, literally translates to something like the cat hole or the squeeze.
The squeeze, okay.
Yeah, sounds about right. Apparently, it's only maybe 60 or 70 centimeters high. Really tight.
Oof.
So they had to crawl through this to get into the upper galleries, the réseau supérieur of the cave system.
Right.
And it was there, right at the very end of these galleries, in this low-ceilinged room, the salle de Bison, the bison room, or sometimes the salle terminale, the end room, that's where they saw them. These amazing clay bison.
And what's really fascinating is how quickly people realized how important this was. I mean, you had some real heavy hitters in prehistory getting involved almost straight away, right?
Yeah.
Like Émile Cartillac and Abbé Ornebrouet.
Absolutely. The big one family, the Capet, they knew what they were looking at, or at least knew it was significant. They contacted Cartillac and Brouet pretty much immediately, and that swift involvement was just crucial for documenting everything properly, for protecting the sculptures right from the get-go. It was incredibly lucky, really, that it was found by a family like that, one that was informed and connected to the scientific world.
Yeah, that early recognition and protection made all the difference, I bet.
Yeah.
Like going back to that tricky access, that chatière.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Who were these sculptures for?
It really does. I mean, the sheer physical effort needed just to reach that chamber, it strongly suggests this wasn't for, casual viewing by the whole group.
Right, not just decoration for the living space.
Exactly. It points towards something more specific, a ritual maybe, where the journey itself, navigating that difficult passage was actually part of the whole experience.
Interesting. Okay, so this is where it gets really good. Let's try and picture these sculptures. The main pair of bison. Can you describe them for us?
Right, the centerpiece. It's this truly remarkable pair of bison, a male and a female, incredibly well modeled. And they're not freestanding, which is interesting. They were actually modeled directly against a big rock, one that had fallen from the cave ceiling ages ago. So the rock supports them. The male is positioned just slightly behind the female.
And they're not small, are they? We're talking pretty substantial figures.
Oh, yeah, definitely not miniatures. The female is about 61 centimeters long, maybe 29 high. The male's a bit bigger, around 63 centimeters long and 31 high.
Wow.
And the male, he's got some bulk too, about 13 centimeters thick. I mean, these are genuinely amongst the largest Paleolithic sculptures ever found.
That's incredible. And the material, just clay from the cave itself.
Yes, exactly. Local clay. They sourced it from within the cave system from a specific chamber called the salle de talon, the heel room.
A heel room? Why that name?
We'll get to that. But what's really amazing is that archaeologists actually found a hollow, like a scoop mark, in the clay floor of that room.
No way.
Yeah. And the size of that hollow seems to match the amount of clay they'd need for at least one of the bison. It shows, real planning. They knew where to get the material, how much they needed.
So they had to dig out this clay, physically haul it. How far? To the bison room? That sounds like a lot of work.
It certainly was. And we know quite a bit about it because, incredibly, footprints and even knee marks were preserved in the clay floor of the Salle des Talents.
Footprints from 14,000 years ago.
Yes. And analysis by sand trackers, actually experts in tracking, suggested at least 2 individuals were involved in carrying the clay. An adult male, maybe around 38 years old, and a young teenager, perhaps 14 or so.
A teenager involved in this.
Apparently so. The footprints indicate they made multiple trips carrying the clay to the gallery where the bison are, the Galerie des Bisons d'Argile.
And you mentioned the footprints told the story of the weight.
They did. The prints going back from the Salle des Talents were deeper, which makes sense, right? They were carrying a heavy load, potentially up to 45 kilograms in total per person over maybe 2 trips.
45 kilos. Wow. That's a serious amount of wet clay.
It really is. And the trackers also noted something unusual about the gait. It was very heel-dominated.
Heel-dominated? What does that mean?
Well, they suggested it might have been a deliberate way to walk, perhaps to try and mask their identity, or maybe just how they walked, carrying that load. It's hard to say for sure. And they also found impressions of knees in the clay, suggesting crawling or kneeling.
This amazing detail. And then there were children's footprints, too, near the actual sculptures.
Yes, that's another layer of intrigue. Lots of children's footprints have been found, not just right by the bison, but in other parts of the cave system, too.
So what do people think that means? Were kids just running around, or...?
Well, there are different ideas. Maybe they were participating in the rituals somehow. Perhaps it was part of initiation ceremonies for reaching a certain age. Some theories even suggest that children were seen as having a special connection, maybe, to the spirit world, acting as mediators. There's one specific idea that a small group, perhaps including a child, might have stayed behind in the cave, maybe for rites connected specifically to making these images.
So if you put all that together, the incredible art, the remote spot, knowing exactly where to get the clay, the footprints, the kids, you can almost see the whole process unfolding.
Exactly. You can start to reconstruct the Ashen operatoire, as archaeologists call it, the whole operational sequence.
The production line almost.
Sort of, yeah. From sourcing the raw material, transporting it, modeling it, the whole thing. It really lets you appreciate the planning, the intentionality of these Magdalenian artists. It wasn't just a casual doodle. It was a deliberate, probably very significant undertaking.
Which naturally leads us to the really big question. What did it all mean? What were they trying to say with these bison?
The million-dollar question. Interpreting Paleolithic symbolism is always tricky, obviously. We can't just ask them. But we can look at the evidence and the main theories. The fact that it's a male and a female, and the male seems to be positioned slightly behind, sniffing the air, it strongly suggests a prelude to mating.
Okay, so maybe something about fertility.
That's a very strong possibility. A kind of ritual, perhaps, aimed at ensuring the bison herds thrived. Bison were absolutely crucial for survival food, hides, bone, everything.
Makes sense.
And European bison typically mate in the autumn, so maybe the timing of visits to the cave was linked to that.
So, like sympathetic magic. To encourage the herds, or maybe ensure hunting success?
That's definitely one line of thought. Propitiatory magic for hunting is a common theory for cave art, although it's interesting, unlike the famous clay bear found in the Montespan cave.
Right, I've heard of that one.
These bison at Latuque don't have any spear marks or signs of being ritually killed.
Ah, okay, so maybe not directly about the hunt itself.
Perhaps not. The location, though, deep, deep inside, really hard to get to, that strongly supports other interpretations, too. Like shamanism, or the idea of the cave as a sanctuary, a sacred space.
A liminal space, like a boundary between worlds.
Exactly. Deep caves were often seen that way in traditional cultures, and the arduous journey just to get there could have been part of the ritual itself, maybe helping to induce altered states of consciousness.
So the act of making the art there, in that spot, that was the ritual, not just looking at the finished product later.
Precisely. The creation process itself could have been seen as a way to, invoke the power of the bison or connect with the spirit world or the earth itself, since they're emerging from that rock. And those children's footprints we talked about, they fit right into this ritual idea too. Maybe they played a specific role, perhaps as mediators, or maybe their presence was important for the ritual's success. It's even been suggested that the journey and the act of creation might have been the most important part, more so than anyone coming back later to look at them.
And the bison itself, it shows up so often in Paleolithic art, doesn't it? It must have been a really powerful symbol.
Oh, hugely powerful. Its sheer size and strength, its importance for survival. It made it an incredibly potent symbol across much of Paleolithic Europe, especially in this Franco-Cantabrian region during the Magdalenian.
Are there other theories, like structuralist ones?
Yeah, people like Leroy Gourhan proposed ideas about animal pairings, like bison representing female principles and horses male, or vice versa, arranged in specific ways in caves. It's debated, of course.
Yeah.
But the very explicit male-female pairing here at Le Touc, well, it could fit into those kinds of schemes, or it could just have a much more direct meaning related to reproduction, fertility, the continuation of life.
So probably not just one simple meaning, more like layers of significance.
Exactly. It was likely a complex web, connected to survival, sure, but also to their understanding of nature, their myths, their rituals for keeping the world in balance. And we have to remember, this wasn't just about individuals. It was part of their social world, how they passed on knowledge, how the community worked together.
Looking at them, even in photos, you just get this sense of incredible skill. These artists really knew what they were doing.
Oh, absolutely. Their level of skill is just phenomenal. Think about it. They had this deep knowledge of bison anatomy. They understood the properties of clay, how to work it, especially in large volumes, without firing it.
Yeah, that's amazing in itself.
It really is. They could create these complex three-dimensional forms, keep the proportions right, even suggest different textures like the mane or the beard.
And you can actually see fingerprints?
Yeah.
And tool marks?
You can. Which is incredible, isn't it? It gives you that direct connection. You see the marks of their fingers smoothing the clay, maybe traces of spatula-like tools made of bone or wood used for finishing touches, incisions for details. It shows real control, a methodical approach.
And the realism. They must have spent a lot of time watching bison.
Undoubtedly. The anatomical accuracy is remarkable. They didn't just capture the general shape, they got specific details right. And even capturing that behavior, the male sniffing the air, the overall posture that shows a really deep familiarity with the animals and their world.
It really makes you think these weren't just, average members of the group having a go. These were specialists, right? Like master sculptors.
It seems very likely. The expertise involved suggests well-established artistic traditions, skills passed down through generations. It's quite possible that creating cave art like this was a specialized role.
Reserved for certain people. Shamans, maybe?
Perhaps, or specific lineages or groups within the society who held that knowledge and ritual status. We can't know for sure, but the skill level points away from it being just anyone.
And these artists, they weren't working in a vacuum, were they? They were part of a bigger picture.
Definitely. The artifacts found in Le Touc d'Audebert tools, other small art objects, they firmly place these artists within the broader Magdalenian culture.
So these clay bison, they're so much more than just, old objects. They feel like a direct message from the past.
They really do. They're powerful symbols, aren't they? Of human creativity, that deep connection people had with the natural world and, well, the complex spiritual lives of these Paleolithic communities.
Yeah, their discovery showed this whole other side to Magdalenian art. This amazing skill in sculpture, using humble clay in such an innovative way.
And the care they took, the detailed recreation of the animals. It speaks volumes about their observation skills, maybe empathy, maybe even veneration for the bison. The whole process, the techniques, the fingerprints, it points to this really thoughtful, sophisticated artistic tradition.
And putting them there, deep in that remote, difficult part of the cave, along with the footprints, the other bison images nearby, it just underlines that this Salle des Bisons must have been a truly sacred ritual space.
Exactly. A sanctuary, a place for important rituals, maybe fertility, maybe hunting success, maybe initiation, maybe connecting with the earth or animal spirits. Whatever it was clearly profound.
And there's that paradox you mentioned, this incredibly fragile clay, preserving these fleeting details like fingerprints for so long. But it also reminds you how vulnerable this whole legacy is.
It does. The cracks are signs of immense time passing, but the fact they're here at all is down to the cave's stability and those crucial conservation choices made early on.
It really does feel like you can almost connect across 14,000 years to the minds and hands of those artists, dedicating their skill, their spirit, to bringing these animals to life in the darkness.
It's a powerful connection. Their work is just this incredible testament to human creativity, the enduring search for meaning in the world around us.
So here's something for you to think about. In our world today, so full of temporary digital things, what hidden masterpieces of human ingenuity, of spirit, might still be out there waiting to be found? Maybe not buried in caves, but perhaps in the overlooked corners of our own time and cultures.